Hey everyone, welcome to Judging for the Win. I'm Dave, and this is my daily ruling. Today I'm going to be talking about the fight mechanic, which is one of the newest of Magic's evergreen keywords. I'm going to be talking all about how it interacts with a bunch of other types of mechanics, and giving you the principles that you need in order to confidently answer fight questions if they come up in an event that you're a part of. Ready? Let's get started. So, I would say probably 95% of the fight questions that I encounter as a judge can be answered with just one simple principle. So if we take a look at fight's definition in the comprehensive rules, we'll see that it says that the two creatures involved in the fight are each going to deal damage to the other one equal to their power. So the important principle that I want to pull out from that definition is that what's happening during a fight does count as damage, but it does not count as combat damage. Combat damage specifically refers to damage that happens as a result of the game event of combat in a player's turn. It does not refer to damage that happens during a fight, even if that fight might happen to occur during the game's combat phase. Alright, so taking that principle in hand, we can immediately answer several kinds of questions that we have related to fights. So, for example, one of the most common kinds of questions that I see is, how does fight interact with X keyword? And, well, let's check some. So, first of all, the one that I wanted to make sure that I dealt with was First Strike. Now, unfortunately for First Strike creatures, the way that First Strike is implemented in the game of Magic is that First Strike creatures have their own special combat step where they get to deal combat damage, but the other creatures don't. And so, unfortunately, that has absolutely nothing to do with what's going on during a fight, which means that the First Strike ability is completely worthless in a fight. That means that a creature with First Strike will not be dealing its fight damage first. All the fight damage is going to happen at the exact same time, the way that it normally does. Another mechanic that has a similar issue would be trample. As you can see, trample is specifically keyed to work off of combat damage, and it therefore does not work during any situation that involves non-combat damage, such as a fight. So that would mean that you would not get to trample excess damage from a trample creature over onto another player during a fight involving a trample creature. Now, let's take a look at some other mechanics that are a little bit more fight-friendly. So, for example, we can see that lifelink and deathtouch are specifically keyed to work off of damage, not combat damage, any damage. And that means that lifelink is going to work exactly like it normally does during a fight. If you fight using a lifelink creature, then you're going to gain life. And if you fight using a deathtouch creature, then the other creature is probably going to die unless your deathtouch creature has 0 power. And this principle works to all kinds of other abilities too. So, for example, if you take a look at Doran the Siege Tower, you can see that its ability specifically refers to combat damage, and that means that Doran in a fight is going to be dealing a hard 0. On the other hand, triggered abilities tend to be a little bit trickier. There's lots of triggered abilities that key off of damage, and lots of triggered abilities that key off of combat damage. And so you'll have to read the cards very carefully in order to appropriately apply this principle and tell whether those triggered abilities would trigger during a fight or not. Alright. So I said that this principle is good enough to answer probably 95% of the questions involving fight. Well, what about the other 5%? And for that, we're going to need the second rule of Fight Club, which you can see here. As you can see, this basically says that if one party to a fight can't show up, then that means the entire fight gets called off. Now, that pretty much mirrors how fights usually work in the real world. However, it can lead to some kind of non-intuitive results in the game of Magic. So, for example, this rule does cover situations where one of the parties involved in the fight stops being a creature before the fight happens, or else it becomes not available for the fight because it's left the battlefield. In addition, this also covers the situation where one of the parties involved in the fight becomes an illegal target. So let's say that we had a spell that said 2 target creatures are going to fight each other. Now, ordinarily, when one of the targets of a spell with multiple targets becomes illegal, the spell will continue to resolve and do as much as it can to any of the remaining legal targets. However, you can see that this fight rule does not allow that to happen. Rather, if you have a spell that says that target creature fights another target creature, then if even one of those targeted creatures becomes illegal target, then that would mean the entire fight gets completely called off. So, using those principles, I think you should probably be able to confidently answer most questions involving fight that are likely to show up in a real live game. If you've got any other questions about this mechanic, definitely leave them in the comments, and I'll do my best to answer all of them. But that's all I have for you today. How did you do? Join me again next time for another daily ruling. But until then, I hope you have a great day.